Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Hare Krishna, welcome back to another session on The Books Are the Basis. This is organized by the ISKCON Ministry of Education, and we're talking about the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And today we are very happy and honored to have with us a very special guest, His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really our great honor that you are with us. I'm super excited to talk to you about this important topic. Of course, Maharaj does not require so much introduction, but still I will say a few words. Maharaj was born in 1947 in Chicago, in America. And as a young student, I think at the age of 22, in 1969, met Srila Prabhupada, and then soon became a leading member of the ISKCON Boston Temple. Later on, got the opportunity to travel with Srila Prabhupada to India and to help establish the movement there. And in 1972, Maharaj became the temple president for ISKCON Juhu, and also a BBT trustee at that time. And of course, we all know the story and how important the Juhu temple was for Srila Prabhupada. And Maharaj wrote a book about it, Abudio Temple, the Juhu story, and we'll talk about it later on. But I find it super impressive, and it also reveals a lot about your story and in your life as a servant and disciple of Prabhupada. And it's amazing, and we talk about it. So after that, in 1977, Giriraj Das at that point became Maharaj, accepted the renounced order of life, sannyas, and also served as a GBC member from 1982 to 2000. Had different responsibilities, of course, in Mumbai itself, in South Africa, in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, also in Spain and Portugal. And of course, Maharaj also serves as an initiating spiritual master, inspiring devotees in general, and of course his disciples by his lectures, seminars. And Maharaj has focused on writing books. Maharaj has written, I think, 4 books so far. One on Srila Prabhupada, one on departed Vaishnavas, one on death from the Vedic perspective, and the latest, as we mentioned, the Juhu story. So again, thank you so much. And so we can start with our conversation. And usually we start with the question, how you came in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books. And it would be nice to hear from you, your first encounter with Prabhupada and Prabhupada's books.
Yes. My first encounter with Srila Prabhupada was as a student at Brandeis University near Boston. Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture on campus, which I attended. And then after the lecture, I went to the small temple they had in a storefront. And there I got 2 books. There were not many books published then.
69.
Yeah. So I got Easy Journey to Other Planets and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And the abridged Gita was also available then, but somehow I didn't get that one. But I took Teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Easy Journey to Other Planets home with me. And I was just fascinated. I just couldn't put them down. Reading and reading and reading. And Easy Journey to Other Planets was like a manual, a condensed manual how to practice bhakti yoga. And I really relished those books and was enriched by them.
Mm. Do you remember specifically something which really touched your heart or kind of made you convinced about the philosophy?
Well, what really convinced me about the philosophy was Srila Prabhupada. So when I got the books, I was already convinced. They gave me more information.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, Easy Journey to Other Planets was like a manual how to practice bhakti yoga. based on Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And I very eagerly applied the principles that I read in Easy Journey to Other Planets.
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. Like there's the Bhakta Bhagavat and there's the Grantha Bhagavat. There's the book and the person, and you were introduced first to the person and then with the book. That's
Yes.
The Bhakta Bhagavat. Wonderful. And as we mentioned, we'd like to hear more also about your days in Mumbai and in India. We talk about that also. But maybe just we can start with the general question. Why is it important for devotees to read regularly? What would you say?
Well, I'll read a quotation from Srila Prabhupada that explains Yes. This is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 25, text 278. The translation, quote, "Man becomes strong and stout by eating sufficient grains. But the devotee who simply eats ordinary grains, but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom, and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. All the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated: the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure. So, one reason to read is so that we maintain our spiritual position. Srila Prabhupada said, "Distributing my books will keep them happy," meaning the book distributors. "Distributing my books will keep them happy, and reading my books will keep them," meaning keep them in Krishna consciousness. And then another reason to read is so that we can, answer challenges. And I will, I'll read a nice little excerpt from a talk that Srila Prabhupada gave on Srimad Bhagavatam 6.138 on June 4th, 1976 in Los Angeles. So, Shri Vishnu Duta Ucho Yuyam Vai Dharma Rajasya Yadi Nirdesha Karina Bruta Dharmasya Nastatvam Yachcha Dharmasya Lakshanam. The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, said, "If you are actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion." That's Bhagavatam 6.1.3. And Prabhupada explains, the Yamadutas had challenged, "Who are you interfering in our business? We have come to arrest him." So the counter challenge was, "You said we are servants of Dharmaraj. It is his jurisdiction. This person is impious. So this is in the jurisdiction of Dharmaraj. He has to try the case and give him punishment, criminal department, law and order. So you cannot interfere with us." Therefore, the challenge was replied by the Vishnu Dutas. If you are actually representatives of Dharmaraj, who tries the cases of Dharma and Adharma, first of all, explain what is Dharma and what is Adharma. This is a very nice challenge. Suppose if you say, we are Krishna conscious persons, one may challenge you. First of all, explain what you know about Krishna. That is quite natural. If you do not know about Krishna, you have no right to say that I belong to the Krishna consciousness movement. You have no right to say. Simply, if you have tilak and kanti, that doesn't mean that you belong to the Krishna consciousness movement. You must know all these things. And then one other quotation from Srila Prabhupada, talk on Srimad Bhagavatam 611 on May 21st, 1975 in Melbourne. We have got Krishna. We have got spiritual master. We have got books, Bhagavat, Gita. Now let us take advantage. These transcendental literatures, we have taken so much pain to translate them into English so that you can understand. We have got 50 books, so take advantage. It is meant for all human beings, not a particular class or nation. No, it is for all human beings. So take advantage of this knowledge, understand the philosophy of life, that I am eternal. So, and then one other quotation, I mean, there's so many, but this one really made an impression on me because it was one of the last purports that Srila Prabhupada dictated when he was on, well, I don't like to use the word deathbed, but when he was bedridden towards the end in Vrindavan. And I happened to be there. And Srila Prabhupada said, we should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. Then everything will be clarified. For Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedic literature. Nigamakalpataror Galitam Phalam. It was written by Vyasadeva, Mahamuni Krite, when he was self-realized. Thus, the more we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the more its knowledge becomes clear. Each and every verse is transcendental. And yeah, I've compiled many quotations from Srila Prabhupada glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam. But we can continue with the interview and maybe we'll come back to those.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these, powerful statements. If you mentioned about the importance of nourishment, that hearing and reading actually maintains our spiritual life. That was a quote. And I found this quite a powerful one. We have no right to say that we are members of the Hare Krishna movement if we don't know about Krishna. It's got a powerful statement in a sense that, yeah, devotees, we have to hear about Krishna and understand him. Another point also, which came from that quotation that you shared, the Prabhupada said he took so much pain to translate these books. Would you like to talk about this in the sense of, isn't it also a way we express our gratitude to Prabhupada, that we read his books?
Yes. Yes, that's a very good point. Many of you may know Srila Prabhupada's schedule. He would take rest around 10 o'clock at night, and then he would get up at midnight. He would take only 2 hours rest. And while we were sleeping, pretty much all of us were sleeping, he was up translating and dictating his Bhaktivedanta purports. So as he said, he took so much pains to give us these books. And we should reciprocate with Srila Prabhupada by reading the books. It's a natural reciprocation. He took so much pain to give us the books, so we should do our part and read the books. And yes, Srila Prabhupada emphasized so much reading his books. Sometimes he said 2 or 3 hours a day, or at least 1 hour a day. So, yeah. And again, as Srila Prabhupada said, distributing my books will keep them happy, and reading my books will keep them in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. Or like the other quote that you mentioned, discuss as much as possible. Like that emphasis of Shravanam Kirtanam, to just hear and absorb ourselves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said that this is sort of on the subject of discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Srila Prabhupada said that giving class for half an hour is equal to reading for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami always used to say that when you repeat what you've read, you get realization. So, yeah, the two go together. And Srila Prabhupada also said that because he heard nicely, he's able to speak nicely. I'm working on a new book about traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India before we got the Juhu land. And one of the first places we went to was Amritsar. And in Amritsar, Srila Prabhupada asked his disciple Yamuna Devi to give a class, which she had never done before. And she was very worried. But she chose one of her favorite verses, 126, and she had practically memorized verbatim Srila Prabhupada's purport to that verse. So she, just from memory, she repeated the purport. And the audience, which was a lot of professionals, high-class people, they really appreciated the class, and Srila Prabhupada appreciated it. So, yeah. And once Srila Prabhupada told me that when I speak, if I just repeat what's in his purports, everyone will think I'm a very learned scholar. Of course, that's not our goal, that people should be learned scholars, but Prabhupada did say that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The power of parampara, just repeating and hearing and repeating what we heard and presenting philosophy as it is. Yeah, that also is an important point, because Prabhupada wanted us to preach, Prabhupada wanted us to share Krishna consciousness, so what can we share if we're not reading?
Yes.
Yeah, we need to read. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there was another talk. I could probably find the exact, but just to save time, I'll paraphrase it. Mm-hmm. Srila Prabhupada asked a devotee to find a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. There were a few devotees, and they couldn't find the verse. And Srila Prabhupada became a little upset, and he said, "You're not reading the books. You're just selling the books, but you're not reading the books. And what if someone asks you that you're very eager to sell these books? What is in them? What are you going to say? Oh, we don't read the books. We only sell them." So Prabhupada was concerned that they couldn't find the reference. They took it as a sign that they're not reading his books.
Yeah. Now, Maharaj, you shared in the beginning how you first met Srila Prabhupada and then came in touch with the books. We mentioned that Bhakta and Grantha, Bhagavat. Now, of course, Prabhupada has left this world 45 years ago. And how do you experience Prabhupada's presence in his books nowadays? Would you like to share some realization how you meet Prabhupada, or how can we actually, what is the proper attitude for us to also make the experience of meeting Prabhupada in his books?
Yes. Well, Burijan Prabhu, our godbrother, wrote a very nice little essay called Prayerful Reading. Mm. And the theme of the essay is that when we read the books, we should be in the mood of prayer that the book, that Srila Prabhupada, that the Shastra, will speak to us what we need to hear. Mm-hmm. And that we implement that in our lives. So I think, and as Burijan Prabhu mentions in that little essay, the books are not just ink on paper. They're alive. They're actually Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara speaking to us. So we should be in a prayerful mood that we can appreciate what they're saying to us and utilize what they're saying to us for our own Krishna consciousness and to help others progress in Krishna consciousness. So yes, it's really important. And we will find that Srila Prabhupada is speaking to us. And I mean, some devotees, I've done it on occasion, not recently, but in the past, they're looking for some guidance. So they'll just, like, so to speak, randomly open a book and read and see what Srila Prabhupada is saying. And they often get the answer to their question by that process. So yeah, they are living.
I think it's a beautiful point, that prayerful reading, that we go with the attitude of, what will Prabhupada tell us? What is important right now? What do we need to hear? It's a wonderful point. We often speak also about different study aims in the systematic study of Prabhupada's books. I believe you're also teaching at the VIHE, right, Maharaj? You also have been teaching at the VIHE, and systematic studies is also, so there we talk about different study aims, and one of them is understanding Prabhupada's mood and mission, the importance of understanding Prabhupada's mood, which is there also. Another one is like Shastra Chakshu, seeing the world through the eyes of Shastra. Share some realization on these topics with us?
Well, just a small incident on seeing the world through the eyes of the Shastra. I was with Srila Prabhupada in his room at the back of Hare Krishna land in Juhu. And in the background, he heard a child crying. And he immediately quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, Balasyaneya Sharanam Pitaro Nrsimha. And the verse basically says that that one who is not cared for or protected by Lord Nrsimhadev cannot do anything for his betterment. For example, the parents cannot protect their child, a physician in medicine cannot save a patient, and a boat cannot save a drowning man. So it was a simple thing, hearing this child crying in the background, but he immediately related it to that verse and quoted that verse. that although the parents don't want the child to suffer, it's not in their capacity to stop the child's suffering without the blessings of Lord Nrsimhadev. And Srila Prabhupada really did see through the eyes of Shastra. Another example, sort of different, but it does show. We were with Srila Prabhupada at the Ardha Kumbh Mela in Allahabad in 1970. And it was very cold. And the pujari at the program was Nanda Kumar, and he was trying to light the ghee lamp for the arti. And the wind kept blowing it out. And, other devotees came up, they tried to like shield the ghee lamp from the wind. He just couldn't light it. And then Srila Prabhupada spoke into the microphone, Harinama, Harinama, Harinami Vikevalam, Kalonasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatiranyata. So it was a funny thing, they were trying to light the ghee lamp, but they couldn't. But Srila Prabhupada related that to the idea that in Kali Yuga, the only way is to chant the holy names. So,
yeah, beautiful examples. Amazing how Prabhupada immediately related to Shastra and philosophy.
Yeah.
These are beautiful examples of Shastra Chakshu, yeah. Now, of course, these kind of stories we can read in your book. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Because Prabhupada emphasized the importance of reading, that his disciples read regularly, daily. But Prabhupada also emphasized the writing, which is an instruction which is not so often heard or spoken about. But there's several statements that Prabhupada actually really emphasized. Maybe we can start with that. Can you explain what's the importance of writing and why should devotees write and what's the benefit?
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's like what I said, that speaking for half an hour is equal to reading for 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada wrote me a letter in which he said, in the midst of your heavy duties, go on writing something, glorifying the Lord, and put our philosophy into words. Writing articles means to express oneself how he is understanding the whole philosophy. So this writing is necessary for everyone. Although the letter was written to me, at the end he says this writing is necessary for everyone. And to go together, Shravanam Kirtanam, first you hear and then you glorify. And Srila Prabhupada said of himself that because he heard nicely, then he could speak nicely. So it's part of the reciprocation of knowledge, that we get knowledge, Shravanam, and then we repeat it, Kirtanam. And by that we get more realization. So yeah, writing is very important. It's part of the whole process.
Wow. Interesting how Prabhupada also said, in midst of heavy duties.
Yeah.
Because usually, we are busy and to write, it's kind of, it requires some space, so where you can focus and think about something. And often we don't find that space or time. But Prabhupada emphasizes, in midst of heavy duty, still you should write. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you Maharaj, even mentioned this is part of the process, in the sense of that Vaishnavas are known to be poets and writers. It's kind of...
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, Prabhupada gave you specifically also the instruction, and in the last couple of years, you have taken that seriously to heart and have written a lot, and you're still writing. You just mentioned you're writing on the next one.
Yeah.
Now, the book on the Jew story, as I mentioned before, of course, the book it really glorifies Srila Prabhupada, his determination, how he really wanted to make sure to build a temple to please Krishna. And as I mentioned, but it also gives quite a deep insight in your personality. I personally was touched by your humility and also by your surrender, how you try to serve Prabhupada, and it gives a nice insight into a guru-disciple relationship, I personally felt. And also, of course, there is a lot of these stories. You just spoke about some of them, this nectar of Prabhupada's interaction with devotees and people. So would you like to share a bit about writing this book, and also maybe in the importance to hear about Prabhupada? Because here we talk about reading Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's teachings, but then to know about the author is also something which deepens our relationship to him.
Yes, that's true. I remember when Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita first came out, and I was president in Juhu. Many people, friends, I guess we could say congregation members, approached me and said that they could appreciate Srila Prabhupada more having read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and they are now more inclined to read Srila Prabhupada's books after reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. And our dear God brother, His Holiness Mukunda Goswami Maharaj, he has emphasized the importance of reading about Srila Prabhupada, and even said that although the Goswamis wrote so many books, but the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is in a way about the Goswamis, in a way more important than the books that they actually wrote. So, I think that's really important that we read about Srila Prabhupada. And that reading about Srila Prabhupada will purify our hearts, and it will also attract us to him and make us more eager to hear his message in his books. Yeah, beautiful point.
Yeah, when we read Charitamrita, how Sanatana Goswami comes to Puri and the exchanges with Mahaprabhu, it's an interesting point, that actually the importance about hearing these personalities. And of course, Prabhupada we are fortunate, we are close to Prabhupada's. Not everyone is so fortunate like you, because you were not only a disciple of Prabhupada, you were a very intimate disciple, like one who had a lot of association and obviously was very dear to Prabhupada. So that's why it's even so, we are fortunate that we can hear from you and other Prabhupada disciples to learn more about Prabhupada's mood. And in his books, of course, in the purports, we sometimes also can learn about his mood, because Prabhupada also speaks about it in the books. But hearing these pastimes, it's something else. It's
you can see how he actually applied the philosophy in life.
Yeah. Anything else you would like to share about the process of writing the book, or something which, in regards to this topic?
Well, Srila Prabhupada instructed me to write way back in 1970 or 71. And he repeated the instruction over the years. And he also said about the Juhu story that someone should write a book about it.
Oh.
He mentioned it twice. Once, first there was a big struggle to get the land in Prabhupada's name. And so the night that the land was finally signed over, after all the guests came, many of our friends came for the signing, and then Srila Prabhupada had to serve them all a feast. And then after most of them had left, he went back in his room and he reclined on the bolster behind him, and he said, "It was a good fight. Someone should write a book about it." And he repeated the same instruction in Vrindavan in 1977, that someone should write a book about it. It's worth writing. It's history. So it was a combination. He instructed me to write, and he also instructed that a book should be written about the Jew struggle. And I was the only devotee to be intimately involved in the project from the beginning to the end, means to when the temple opened. So it was logical, almost necessary, that I should be the one to write the book, and I'm glad I got the opportunity by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, and that it was completed, and it has been appreciated quite universally. If I do say so myself, but it's the truth.
Yeah. It's part of history. It will remain for generations to come, like a very important book, no doubt.
Yeah. Yes. His Holiness Radhanath Swami's disciple Gauranga has said that this book should be mandatory reading for all ISKCON leaders. It's like a manual of how to manage and lead.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I also served as a temple president for the last 14 years, and
wow.
in ISKCON Zurich. So I took a lot of, and like when I read and saw how you dealt with situation and how you struggled as a temple president, it's quite interesting for me to read. Certainly it has a lot of wisdom for managers.
Nice.
Maybe in this regard also we could just talk about the importance of reading for managers. I mean, you have been temple president, you've been a GBC member, and sometimes leaders struggle to find time to read because there's so much to do, so much to manage, but then still the importance of reading for managers is specifically important. I mean, necessary, I would say. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's necessary for their own spiritual nourishment, and it's also necessary for their management. One issue that managers have to deal with is getting devotees to do what they say. And I remember fairly early on when I was struggling with that issue, getting devotees to do what I say. So an older godbrother advised me that you do it by preaching. And obviously to preach, you have to read the books. So it's necessary both ways for the manager to be spiritually strong, and also for him to have the potency or the I don't like to use the word ammunition, but to get others to do what he says for Prabhupada, for Krishna.
Yeah. For the personal life, but also to have the strength to lead others and inspire others. Yeah. Okay, so far we spoke about the importance of reading, and then also we spoke a little bit about writing. Maybe before we end, we could talk a bit about the practice of reading, because sometimes devotees, they face difficulties in reading. They feel that there's a lack of time, or if they find time, then they are distracted. It's hard to concentrate, or a lack of taste. What would you advise devotees how to deal with these obstacles? How to develop a taste and inspiration to read?
Yeah, well, yeah, reading is necessary. Again, distributing my books will keep them happy, and reading my books will keep them. I mean, we have to make time. In my book, Watering the Seed, I have a small essay called Time for Krishna. It's about, well, it can be taken both ways. You know, it's time for Krishna now. And also, we need to make time for Krishna. And yeah, Burijan Prabhu said it takes time to become Krishna conscious. And again, that can be taken in two ways. It takes time because it's a gradual process, but it takes time in the sense you have to invest time to become Krishna conscious. So we need to invest that time in reading. And in this little essay that's in Watering the Seed called Time for Krishna, I give the example that if you have a bottle of water and you try to fill it up with sand, there won't be any room for big stones. But if you put the big stones first, then the sand can fit in between the big stones. So the idea is that the big stones are the most important things, and the sand is the less important thing. So we want to fill our time with the most important things first, which is like chanting and reading. And then automatically there will be time for the less important things to fit in. But if we go for the less important things first, we can fill up the whole jar and there won't be room for the more important things. So yeah, we have to taste, that, but Rupa Goswami also gives that example in the Upadeshamrita that, avidya is like, avidya, that means like ignorance. So it's like the disease of jaundice. I have jaundice in India, and the example is accurate. So when you have jaundice, sweet things taste bitter. But you take the sweet things as a medicine, and as you gradually recover your health, those sweet things, which tasted bitter, become sweeter and sweeter. And then when you're cured, you can taste them as they are, which is sweet, like nectar. So even if we don't have taste, even if it's like a bitter medicine, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, we should still do it. We should take the medicine, and as we take the medicine, we'll get cured of the disease, and then we'll be able to relish the books.
Mm-hmm. Which is your favorite book personally? You have a certain book of Prabhupada that you relish most?
Yeah, it's hard, but I would probably say Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah, I love Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, but all of the books are wonderful. But if I had to choose one, if I was stuck on a desert island with only one book to read, I would probably go for Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's so much of the other scriptures in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like one, of course, of also important question that we usually talk about is application. How do we make sure to apply what we read? I mean, Prabhupada give us so much knowledge, so much wisdom. If we just would apply what we know, we all would be saints. But sometimes it's difficulties to actually apply, to live according to that knowledge. So how to ensure that we learn to apply? What would be your advice for us?
Well, it's a consequence of prayerful reading. We're reading with the prayer to get instructions that we can apply in our lives. And we just have to do it. I mean, it's in our interest. You know, Nate vidu swarthagatim hi Vishnu. Prahlad Maharaj says the goal of life, our interest, our real self-interest, swarthagatim, our real self-interest is to serve Vishnu or Krishna, go back home, back to Godhead. And we can achieve that by applying what's in Srila Prabhupada's books. Yeah.
So there needs to be a strong desire to actually experience that transformation and really grow spiritually.
Well, that's true. That's true. If becoming Krishna conscious, going back to Godhead, is not a high priority, then our determination will be weak. But again, by reading, we should be convinced that the material world is not a happy place. It's not our real home. Our real home is with Krishna in the spiritual world. And then we'll have that resolute determination to follow the process.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maharaj. I think we got so much wisdom. You shared so much realization with us. Do you have any last message you'd like to share with us? How would ISKCON be different if devotees would read, or any personal thought you'd like to share with us towards the end?
Yeah, there have been some surveys taken of the ISKCON leaders when they came to Mayapur about how much they were reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And the results were not that encouraging by and large. And so the GBC SPT, Strategic Planning Committee, has made it a priority to encourage the leaders to study Srila Prabhupada's books. And again, that will be good for them. It will be good for the devotees under them. And in numerous letters that Srila Prabhupada wrote to GBCs and temple presidents, he said that their duty is to see that the devotees under them are reading his books. And then how can they do that if they themselves are not reading the books? It's like a mother brought her son to Mahatma Gandhi because her son liked to eat sweets too much. So she asked Mahatma Gandhi to tell her son not to eat sweets so much. So Mahatma Gandhi said, come back in 2 weeks. So she came back in 2 weeks. She asked the same thing, and Mahatma Gandhi said, don't eat sweets so much. So the mother asked Mahatma Gandhi, well, why didn't you tell him that 2 weeks ago when I first came to you? And he said, because at that time I was eating sweets myself. So how could I tell him not to eat sweets? So so yeah, we have to be reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Otherwise, how can we tell others to read Srila Prabhupada's books? And it's a common instruction that Srila Prabhupada gave to GBCs and temple presidents to see that the devotees are reading his books. And the corollary is that they themselves should be reading the books.
All right. I think if after this interview one is not inspired to read, I don't know what's wrong. We got a lot of good reasons today to really sincerely take shelter in Prabhupada's books. So again, thank you very much, Giriraj Maharaj, for your precious time and your association. Very much appreciated.
So if we're ending, I suggest we conclude with Vaishnava Pranam.
Please.
Yeah. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, who can fulfill the desires of everyone and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa Truvyaschа Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Study Ki Jai.
So that's Giriraj Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.